Hey everyone, it's Martin Sibley here. Welcome to the latest edition of the Martin Sibley Show. Really excited to have old dear friend, almost family now, AJ Leon from the
Definitely,
Misfits
definitely.
for joining us today, AJ. So, I mean, a little quick intro to AJ, really. That I'm going around the world at the moment, giving talks and on various podcasts, all about inclusion and getting disabled people to be empowered. And even to this day, when I'm telling my story of my journey, AJ and Melissa are right in the thick of that story. It's like day zero for my adventure, my new career, which
Inextricably linked, baby, whether you like it or not.
I mean, it goes back to like, I think it was '09, wasn't it, when we first met?
Oh
Like,
yeah, oh yeah.
long time
I mean,
ago
that
now.
was that was very towards very early towards my own journey. So it's we go way back, man, way back.
Well, that was a really interesting thing. We caught up more recently about it. That obviously I knew what you guys were up to when we first met back in '09, and the big thing for the people that have followed me will know that you guys essentially helped me to get set up with martinsibley.com and how to blog and how to share a story and build a tribe, and obviously everything that has come from that has been phenomenal. But like it only hit me more like last year or two that you guys were really grinding it out when we met as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was not out of our riches. That was out of our poverty. That we were like, yeah, we're gonna do spend a bunch of hours. And Dino too. Like people on our team were coding things, Disability Horizons, like all that stuff.
Yeah,
Man.
no, it's amazing. We'll get sort of stuck into a few of these different points through the interview, but I mean, I think what struck me, and particularly when we had that chat in the last year, and really hit home to me how you guys were going sort of day to day in your business and your lives while you
Yeah,
still helped me, is that
yeah,
you were really clear on your values and what your vision was from day dot. And a lot of people have that kind of once I'm off the ground and I've got money and I'm going to then give back. But you guys were being charitable and giving mentoring and support to people like myself while hustling yourselves. It's a really
yeah.
cool angle, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, I have this phrase. It's called "for the memoirs." It says at the time, you just you got to grind, you got to do your thing, and then later on, you can kind of tell the story as it was. There's a
Yeah,
lot of entrepreneurs that walk into a building and they're like, they're pitching to VCs, and then you look the part, you did this and that, and some of them are living in their fucking cars.
yeah,
And that sort of, but then 10 years later you can tell that story and it's a cool story. So I think that's kind of the interesting part about a narrative is that a lot of it's perception. But yeah, in terms of charity, I don't believe that. Part of the reason why I left my previous life was to, as you know, dude, was to live a life of meaning and purpose and adventure, and to help people that I thought that could be helped. And I don't believe in the idea of waiting until some, you know, possibly predestined future to try to assist people. I think I mean, to me, that's just not the way that I live. I mean, some people, I feel like they fall my path. I think fate brought us together, and you act or you don't.
yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Well, obviously, yeah, so the people watching and listening, they get the fact that we're good friends and that we've been through various adventures together. But it'd be great just to kind of share with everyone watching and listening a bit more about you and what kind of you're up to with Misfits at the moment, and just a bit more of an insight into your career and your world of work.
Sure. I mean, do you want to talk? Do you want me to talk about currently and not get into the past, or just kind of like what we're working on
Well, I
now?
mean, I guess, yeah, like, it'd be cool to hear when you set out what the plan was, and then kind of it'd be great to see where it's at now and how the two compare as well.
Yeah. Well, when I set out, this is back in 2008. I mean, I was not. I had a very successful career as a person in finance in New York, and I left. I left that entire career and I burned it to the ground in one day, and that you can get that story in various videos interviews online. But I didn't leave to start something. I left to evacuate a life plan going horribly wrong. And so it wasn't, I didn't have an idea. I didn't have a business. I didn't have anything that I wanted to do. I just knew what I didn't want and couldn't tolerate in my life any longer. And sometimes I tell people that's enough. You know, I think genuinely speaking, people waste a lot of time based on horrible advice that's given out there, on focusing on what you want to do. But the reality is a lot of people don't know what they want to do. And a lot of what I have done over the last 10 years, and Martin, what you've done, has changed significantly based on opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like actually, you know, what I want to do is kind of irrelevant, because 10 years from now, I could be building hotels and buildings and God knows what, right? And so if that was my dream that I spent, 5 years crafting based on the advice that people give online, then you're going to waste a lot of time, and maybe you won't see the opportunity that is both realistic and like something that you can grab that will be a stepping stone to the next story, to the next story, to the next story. So I realized it was almost like one moment, but it was about like an hour and a half that was really intense moment of my life, that this life is mine and that it is my one and only life. And the idea of like living my life out like a story, and thinking of myself as the protagonist in a grand adventure, all of a sudden me leaving a career, even if I went bankrupt, even if I ended up on the street, I thought, yeah, but that's a cool fucking story, right? You know what I mean? It's like, those are the types of things I would want to read if it didn't work out, So even in the worst case scenario, I'm still better off than most people that are living unremarkably average scripted lives, and definitely the life that I was living. It's a completely different perspective, So that's why, I left. And soon after leaving, me and my wife, Melissa, and I left 4 days before my wedding, so we had to.
You really wanted to spice this story up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was
living it and dealing with the consequences as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, I didn't have in finance in 2008. When you're, in your fucking 20s, you spend more than you earn. So I had no cash. I do not come from a wealthy family at all. My dad died when I was 14. My mother's not wealthy. So there was no assistance. There wasn't anyone I could turn to if anything went wrong. I had very little cash. I had a lot of debt that I had racked up, even though I was making a lot of money.
I think that's important to make, in the sense that when I've heard you tell the story over the years, conferences and on podcasts and stuff, and that people could hear you were in finance. So therefore you must have been loaded to kind of have a big runway and a little comfy cushion. But as you say, in that world, just spending more than you're making. So it wasn't that case at all.
No, not at all. And that's common, that's common in that world where you're not, it's very common, because the next bonus check will be twice as much as what you spent. And you're on this up into the right trajectory that's going to take you into the multiple millions of dollars in the next 10 to 15 years. So you're not even conditioned to think about, what you're spending. No one's saving money. Why would you do that? I didn't have anything. Plus everything that I had, I'd spent on, it was, $20,000 ring for Melissa, big wedding, this opulent honeymoon. So I probably spent $100,000 all in on that, which I maybe could have had in the bank. But at the time that I was spending it, I didn't know that I was going to leave. Right. For all intents and purposes, I was fucking broke when I left, hilariously. But I knew that day that I just saw a vision of myself as a 70-year-old man looking back at me then, mourning the glory of a life that could have been. And I couldn't weather that anymore. So I took off, and then Melissa and I, from that moment, tried to, first of all, my first thing was I need to remember the last time I was happy and the last time I felt like I was doing something that actually fucking mattered. And I knew exactly what that time was. I used to produce theater. I used to produce Shakespearean theater in found spaces. That was the first thing I did professionally. And I did it myself. Like I founded the company. I produced it, directed, sometimes acted in plays, and I loved it. And it was some of the greatest times of my life, most creative times of my life, most, like risk-taking times of my life. Anyone who knows people that are in theater, there's nobody that risks greater, that operates in a lean, in a lean method, that knows how to graft better than people who produce theater, And so I learned a lot during that time, and I was lit. I was just really inspired and on fire. And I remembered that. And then Melissa and I decided, to take the last of the cash that we had, and we traveled to Stratford-upon-Avon, and we lived in a van down by the river, and and I just reconnected Stratford-upon-Avon to Shakespeare's hometown, and I reconnected with that love. I watched a lot of free theater in the RSC Garden because I couldn't afford the Royal Shakespeare Company tickets. But it was an exceptional time, and it's when I started writing again. I started writing letters to a younger version of myself, and it helped me. I wasn't writing to start a blog. I was the cathartic process of writing to yourself as a younger man, and what the kind of truth as you're knowing it now, but saying, hey, this is what you should do. That's, when you actually write it, it's one thing to think it or talk about it, but when you write it, and fuck blogging or publishing, it just seeing it in a journal forces you then to look in a mirror at your own ideas, right? And as a human being, we are only a collection of our fucking ideas. We're just fucking carcasses of meat. That's all we are.
Journal, don't you, every day? Like, it's something that you do regardless of where you are and what you're up to. You still journal to get those ideas flowing and out and everything.
Yeah. And I don't, most of what I write, I don't publish. I'm not interested in publishing. I'm not, I've written a book, and I used to have a really successful blog, and then I decided to close it down because it just wasn't, I just didn't want to write that anymore. Yeah. And I'll probably come back, but it's like, I don't write for other people. I wrote for me originally, and then I returned to that. But I think the cathartic process is exactly that it forces you to kind of catalyze your own ideas, and then actually stare at them in the face. And that helped me kind of, it helped me remember who I was. It helped me to start to understand a direction, not like this company I'm going to start, but a direction that I could start moving in. Yeah. And then that's where I went. And there's an economic side of that where you got to figure out how to make a living. Right. But but that's another thing. So that, there's multiple concentric circles happening, and, but we figured it out. 10 years later, we're still kicking, baby. No,
it's amazing. And the big thing that keeps hitting me when you're talking, and something I've been pondering in general as well, is that everyone, all the sort of Instagram memes and the blogs, and it's all this thing about finding your passion and finding your purpose. I'm not saying that any of that's bad or wrong. I think, it's what you're saying as well. It is about connecting, but most people go down that route of, what is my blog going to be about for the readers, and what is the blog going to, they forget to go inwards, is my point. And really the passion doesn't need to be this linear, I'm going to 40 years from now be doing X, Y, Z. It's really just connecting inwardly about what gets you going, what you're interested, what you're passionate about, and then trying to turn that into a creative pursuit, or helping people, or the economic business side, and getting those circles, as you say, concentric circles to join. But I feel like some of the kind of, entrepreneurial people and books, that they kind of bastardize this whole thing about finding your purpose, where people just feel like they can never do it the way they're being kind of told to do it.
Yeah. I think you're right. And it's all well-intentioned, I'm sure, but
of course, yeah.
It's just bad advice. It's just bad advice. And a better advice would be like, well, if you were reading The Life and Times of Martin Sibley or AJ Leon, like, what would you want the character to do right now? And what would keep you up late at night turning the pages, right? Because the whatever that is, that's what you're going to regret not, so that could be, and it is linear in the sense that it's a story, right? So it's not like starting this business. It could be the first step, quitting a job. The next step could be taking a trip. It could be reconnecting with your grandfather that you haven't talked to in 10 years that you thought about every day. And like that could lead to everything in this world, the moment that you're out on a grand adventure, leads to something else. And we know this from books. Like, this is why we're intoxicated by narrative, and this is why we don't just read fucking entrepreneur. I mean, people literally spend hundreds of millions of hours a year reading fucking stories that other people came up with. Think about how insane that is.
Yeah.
Like, some other dude comes up with all these characters and all these stories, and then some girl on this side of the planet is sitting there reading those. We're intoxicated by the narrative, and we wish we were heroes. That's what we want to be. We want to be a fucking hero. We want to be an adventure on a a protagonist on a grand adventure.
Yeah, but not enough people are taking that leap of faith to do it themselves, because I think as you say, there is that influence of parents and teachers and the media and all the rest of society that we believe we have to do things a certain way. And a lot of people are still, I think they're waking up more to this way of life, that you can still have enough money to live off, but also help people and make a difference, and also see the world, or do whatever it is. Because obviously I'm always wary of saying they're the things I've done, so that's what everyone should do. We all have our own individual preferences as well. But I think people are still, they're sat in those cubicles and scared of taking that leap because they don't know what the future's going to hold.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is, like, if they were reading that story, the Frodo doesn't know what the fuck the future is going to hold as he's on his way to Mordor. Luke Skywalker doesn't know what the fucking future is going to hold when he's going going towards the Death Star. I mean, that's the point, right? We have been so sterilized and sanitized, but through propaganda. And this is propaganda that is, of course, it's societal and it's teachers. And, I think Seth Godin does a good job of point, but it's also, parents and people that love you, and not because they don't love you. It's because they love you too much. Right.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's antithetical. The advice that they're going to give is antithetical to the advice that I would give to somebody to live an extraordinary life. Right. Someday I'm going to look into the eyes of my son and I'm going to tell him, oye, mijo, don't do that. Don't quit your job, or don't go out on that adventure. Because I'm going to be worried. I will say that to him. And I hope to God he has the courage to look at me in my eyes and tell me to go fuck myself. Right. You know what I mean?
Do you remember when I told you that I'd quit my job, and the reaction of my mum and dad?
Yeah.
And as you say, that's the maternal and paternal instinct is natural to protect and to be cautious. But at the end of the day, we have to go out and find our own way in the world.
Yeah, well, and a good thing, a good example is you and your career and what you've done, Martin, because of what we're talking about, right? Because when you and I met almost 10 years ago, you didn't know what you wanted to do. You simply knew that this life was killing you, and that if you continued in it, that you would continue to exist, but you would erode in the inside, and pieces of you would die, and it would just dim you, and at some point you'd just be, a sterile, watered down version of the Martin Sibley you once knew.
Yeah.
That freaked you out enough to then move. But since then, I mean, people can see what you're doing now, but when we started, it was just a blog. And then we did the webinars, remember? That was like, okay, fuck, we can do these webinars. And then it was like the ebooks and the courses. And then we launched fucking Disability Horizons. And then it was, a startup that didn't work out that we tried to, there were so many things.
Yeah.
And me too, right? There's been a million things that I've tried, because the point wasn't that the passion that you had for being a writer or speaker or consultant, things that you do today, right? It wasn't about that. It was about simply understanding at a very visceral spiritual level what was simply not you.
Yeah.
And then moving away from that first, right? Just first pushing away from that. And some of that takes a little bit of courage. And then just keeping your eyes peeled for the opportunities. That's it. And then aligning the opportunity, like some of it'll be like some stuff that you maybe not necessarily want to do forever, but for now it's like, oh, this is interesting, right? We'll play around and make a little money, put it, and then figure out something else. And then some of it's going to be giving, some of it's going to be creative, some of it's going to be, creating an economic sustainability for yourself. And look at what you've done,
And that's actually a really nice segue into the other area I wanted to explore, because I know when we've talked over the years, you've always seen these kind of key areas and themes within, I don't want to say your business, because it's like your life's artwork. It's like life is your canvas and you're sort of painting things as you go. But I remember you always said that you wanted to have exactly what you just said now, that giving back and helping area, that being creative and just being artistic and coming from your soul, and obviously the economic sustainability. So looking back from when you started out until today, have you got things that you would say you're most proud of under those three sort of circles? And that's quite a broad question, but just to give people a chance and insight, of the things you've done under those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I love theater. I used to do immersive theater, and I love the connection that provides. I produced a conference called Misfit Con for 3 years. It was a trilogy event, and then it was like I had always planned. I don't like the idea of annual conferences. That's just not my shtick. I don't do things in perpetuity. I think that there's a beginning and a middle and an end to most stories, and then it's got to close, and maybe it'll reemerge in a new form. But so we'd done it for 3 years, and still to this day, a lot of my friends and some friends that are quite well known, it changed. Like Srini Rao still talks about it to this day. Pam Slim still talks about Jonathan Fields, and because it was a powerful event, and it was one that I poured everything into, because it was an AJ sized event, because I basically inculcated everything that I had ever done and knew in theater, brought in all like opera singers, hip hop artists, violinists, cellists, great speakers, food, cocktail artists, and it was 5 days of an immersive event. Hearing the story still 5 years, this is 5 years ago, of how it transmogrified their lives, that's a big, so from a creative aspect, that's huge for me, that's.
And of course I shot myself in the foot because I'd left Scope. I'd gone like traveling the world, and then I couldn't get to you guys when Misfit Con was. I was in like Barcelona or something. But next time, man, next time.
Well, like I said, sometimes reincarnation, it might just come back in a different form.
Europe, do one in Europe.
thinking. So that's one thing. I produced my first film. Executive producer called Confection, which we just released.
I love that film, by the way. Me and Kasha went to watch it. They had a pop-up festival in Cambridge. You know the story, but for people watching and listening, they had a film festival in Cambridge, and we knew that AJ's film was going to be shown. So of course we wanted to go along, check out the film, give you lots of love and support for your latest venture. And we went to the main where we thought it was going to be. And they were like, no, it's in the park, in a lorry. And it was the coolest thing I've ever done, because the film was amazing, man. It was really amazing film, and congratulations for that.
Thank you.
And then we're like sat in this lorry with like 30 other people. And it was so AJ. You didn't know that was the way they were going to show it, but it was just so Misfit. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool, man. Yeah, I heard about that screening, and I think they talked to us about like how they do things kind of a little off the wall, and I was like, perfect, man. The more off the wall, the better for us. That was a big accomplishment. I had always wanted to produce films. I watched Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet when I was 13 years old, And I
Yeah.
remember turning to my buddy Keith, and I was like, man, I'm going to make a movie someday. So
Yeah.
I'm producing my second one now, which will be out early next year. It's just an animated short based on Charles Bukowski's Death is Smoking My Cigar. So that's another kind of area of interest. My book that I published has been another thing that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And kind of the illustrations and the artwork. And then my company, my company is now, we work on 7 continents. It's employ 55 people. It's a large, it's a big operation, and it spans across the globe, and that's pretty cool.
So talk a bit more about the company then. Like what is Misfit up to at the moment as a company then?
Yeah, so Misfit is actually broken up into 4 different organizations. So it's Studio Misfit is our creative agency. We have clients in everywhere from like Vancouver, Silicon Valley, LA, New York, London, now Brisbane, Sydney, and then in Cambodia and Southeast Asia. So we kind of span across the globe.
Yeah.
Our work has been like, strategy, brand identity, but with large brands. So we work with some publicly traded companies, a lot of tech startups. In the hospitality space, we work with some of the like large art, like Edition hotels and Rosewood and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's a lot of strategy, brand identity, design, engineering, everything you would find in a full service creative agency. And we act like the agency of record for our clients.
Yeah.
So that's that. And then Misfit Productions, which is also the arm where I do my creative films, is an animated studio where we produce animated films for clients. So some clients have us on retainer, particularly in Silicon Valley, where we do like animated films for them constantly about their products and blah, blah, blah. And, animated explainers are kind of like something that most people know about, and that's that business. And then it funds the creative side of the business. We have Misfit Press, which is our publishing house. And, Misfit Press is a fun one because we publish books when we feel like they are important and timely. And we publish poetry books, Shakespearean poetry books. We published Professor Dr. Chris Ryan's latest book. So not many, but we also produce events. So we produce some pretty cool events, and we're producing courses now to kind of make literature more accessible. So it's kind of a disaggregated, more like community-oriented publishing house.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Misfit Foundation, which is our humanitarian arm. And through there, I've been able to raise almost $7 million for different charities and direct aid projects. We do a lot. I mean, we do an enormous amount of work there in terms of the hours that we put in that are unpaid hours. Sometimes we cut checks. We have residency programs. We have fellowship programs with the University of Birmingham and the University of Warwick. So yeah, we do a lot, we do a lot in that end, but that's kind of how it's cut up. That's the way the organization's cut up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And I guess that did sort of mirror what we were saying about those areas that obviously the creative agency, while still is very artistic and beautiful and it helps people, is really the area that helps to power Misfits on an economic level. And then you've got the charity work, you're doing the humanitarian work with the foundation, and obviously with the publishing, it's that outlet to really help people to create art.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. And the films too, like the films is kind of two-sided. That's a perfect little medium because we have a services arm that generates revenue. And then we have a creative arm where we, produce and release our own films on this film festival circuit. So it allows me to do both. And that's for me, like that's always been my model. So if people ask me about like, oh, well, how did you build Misfit? That's me though. I mean, some people are just, they're just humanitarians or they just want to operate in one area. I have varied interests, and I've always wanted to leverage free market economics to change the world. So I have to, within any economic model that I'm creating, I'm thinking, okay, within this, how do we make money and make this sustainable?
Yeah.
What piece of this can be creative outlets? So even in the agency, like I've got 2 guys that work for me that are just graffiti artists where I just commission crazy art projects, sometimes for clients, but sometimes for us internally, just random shit that, I mean, I'll give you right now we're getting into prototyping different Mischief products.
Uh-huh.
So this is a product that's made out of it's made out of old denim jeans, upcycled denim jeans.
Nice.
And we're working with indigenous people here in the Philippines to basically fund them to make their indigenous fabrics and then put them into the products.
Yeah.
So it's a product that's not released into the market, but it's something that we'll be doing, but
yeah,
within that element. So.
And that because I think when we met and I was working at Scope and you were talking at the Institute of Fundraising very much about more the sort of not-for-profit angle of how social media can spread your message and build a tribe and get funds in or volunteers and all the rest of it. But at that time, my prism of viewing the world of disability become very on the not-for-profit side, as opposed to, you say, about free market economics. And then having studied economics myself, it was just this beautiful light bulb moment that, disabled people, we are consumers. So, it doesn't always need to be this kind of rattle the bucket, shake the hat, feel sorry, pity, sympathy. It was like, well, actually, there's this whole argument that we are voters, we are citizens, we are consumers. And so there's ways of helping those with financial support and all the rest of it. But actually, for a lot of people, that isn't the problem. It's about confidence. It's about information. It's about being entrepreneurial. And I mean, oh my God, the stuff that's been kicking off lately, it's just exponential, that from that seed, it's just so far reaching, and I really love the thing you're talking about, the story and the protagonist, because another area of your life is you travel a lot, don't you? You're very much a digital nomad is the word you use, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we've got offices and stuff, but I'm on the road 50% of the year purposely. I love it. I love travel. So about 250,000 miles a year.
And I think what is phenomenal with you, AJ, is that you've, as you say, you've come to that conclusion of who you are and what you want to do and who you want to be through your methods of journaling, and everyone has different methods of how they connect with themselves, but you just get out there and you just live it totally unabashedly, unashamedly you. But the ripple effect is massive, because I remember when I was still at Scope, and obviously when I talk about that story, it was killing me, but it was nothing about Scope. It was a good charity and it gave me a lot as well. But big thing for me was the travel. I really wanted to travel. And when I was logging on and seeing you and Melissa going in a van across America and stuff like that, it's that simple thing of showing what's possible. And I know that that's what I wear as a badge of honor now, is that all of the younger, particularly younger disabled people, I'm just being me. I'm not even thinking all the time about what they're going to think, but just by being me, it shows them what's possible. And so, from your crazy travels, next thing, me and Philip are off in the car around Europe, and because if I hadn't seen you do it, I wouldn't have known that was possible to believe. And it's just opening people's eyes up is so powerful for making the world more harmonious and cohesive.
And I think the main thing that would kind of isolate your primary point there is just to be your fucking self. I mean, in a world in which most advice that we receive is about messaging, and then looking at different, in this particular space, bloggers or influencers, whatever term you want to use, and then creating something that is similar to them, and then always trying to craft this image. I just don't fucking care. You know what I mean? I don't care, and I'm not, and it's not because I'm an asshole. It's just because I'm on an adventure, right? And so I'm gonna live that out. All the way. And I think by being that way, and you being the way that you are, and now, and not really thinking is this on brand? Is this how do I say, the right way? You're just telling if you decide to tell little snippets of your story and different social channels, like you're just doing it because you fucking want, because you want to. You're not trying to like build your audience. You know what I'm saying? And therefore you'll probably build your audience greater by just.
Well, that's the irony, isn't it?
Exactly.
By being more whoever you are, those that get you are going to love you, and those that don't get you, some are going to bitch, but most people are just going to go elsewhere, and it's not really a big deal. But when people try to be everything to everyone, they want to be like millions of, YouTube followers and all that. Like there's no substance or traction to what they're doing. It's just it's just noise.
Yes, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So listen, before we wind up, man, just give us a little snippet into some of the plans for the future. What are you working on and dreaming up at the moment?
We're going to start a division that's just dedicated to selling cocaine to the children. No, I'm kidding. To children under 12. No, I'm kidding. I mean,
can I get in on this, like with some or something?
The ROI is extraordinary.
Can imagine.
I mean, there's quite a few things, but like one is moving into the physical product realm. So I've been messing around with about 15 to 20 different prototypes of products I want to produce under a Misfit brand, probably to be released. You know me, like I don't do things quickly. I do things right, so I like to make sure that it's perfect. So probably not until 2020, I'd say. We're going to, producing more films is something that I'm really interested in over the years, and both narrative and documentary. I wanted to start out with narrative and animation because they're just very difficult mediums, and it's not just, I mean, I love documentary and I love that, but that, it's not just interviewing and picking up a camera and going, it's telling a story and having to have a cast and crew of 100 people and, or like animating a whole thing and having 7 animators and illustrators on, so probably, we're going to do a bit more of that, and I'm interested in doing that. And yeah, just, just more of what we're doing now. I mean, I'm having the time of my life, I'm 36 years old. I started out, as with like nothing but a backpack on my back, and Melissa and I am completely fucking broke. I stuck to my ideals, and I've always tried to, anytime that somebody's crossed in my path that I just felt like, either God himself or the universe or whatever the fuck you want to call it was like, hey, this is a person that needs you right now. And this might be it for them, right? I've always stepped up in those moments or tried to. And I'm having a fucking, I'm having a ball. I'm having a fun time. And that's the main thing. I always say to Melissa, like from the beginning, this is the little piece of advice for anyone doing fucking anything. I always have three filters, always whenever I'm deciding to do a project or whatever. One, is it fun? Right? Like, are we going to have a good fucking time? That's for me, that this about me, like it can be hard work. It can be, whatever the fuck we're going to do, but are we going to have a great fucking time doing it?
Preferably with cocktails, right?
Well, definitely with cocktails. Like if it doesn't include alcohol, then I don't want a piece of it. But like, and by that, I mean, like, am I working with people that I love, that I can have a drink with and celebrate with? Like, are we going to enjoy ourselves? That's number one. Number two, is it meaningful? So is there something, and not construing meaning, but is there something in this that is actually significant, and then number three, is it sustainable? So is it something that, if it's the infinity game and something like a Misfit Press, the point is not to make $1 million. The point is to continue the game, right? That's what Chris Ryan taught me. It's like there's an infinity game and then the binary game. Misfit Press is you just keep on going. And then there's other games where it's win or lose.
Like success, inverted commas success, people really give themselves a hard time if they've not done $1 million or sold it or gone public. But like you showed me that the Fat Horizons is still going 7 years later is fantastic because it's meaningful and it's fun, but it's sustainable.
Totally. Exactly the point. I mean, and that's, so those three things, those three filters, I think are, if I was going to leave your listeners with anything would be to, that keep that at the forefront of your mind and don't let anybody convince you otherwise. And whatever the fuck you do, don't just follow the money. If the money's there, fucking make the money. I mean, I'm not opposed to making money. You know, I know how to make money better than I mean, I clearly know how to make money. I run a big operation, but I don't follow the money, and I'm not intoxicated by it, you know? So, so that's last and final words.
Awesome. So where can people find out more about your work? What are the good websites and social media to follow, AJ?
Well, they'll get better. Probably just, you know, Instagram. I'm not a big LinkedIn dude, so and I kind of gotten off other platforms. So you can follow me on Instagram at AJ Leon, and reach out. And you know, my name's AJ Leon. You can just search me on Google, and there's quite a few interviews and podcasts and stuff to get a bit more information. And yeah, that's about it. Awesome. Or search the Misfits.
Yeah.
I mean, you can search Misfit. And you can get to Misfit Productions if you search it, or Misfit Press, Misfit Foundation. You know, you can get to the different sections of Misfit.
Awesome. Well, listen, man, thank you for the time. It was really good it's always good to chew the fat, but it was really nice that we could actually share one of our chats with other people. And I'm sure there's going to be loads of people that are in that place. They just need that little gentle nudge and that little feeling that it's possible to go out and live their own story and be their own protagonist.
Yes, indeed. Well, hopefully this helped a little bit.
Cool.
It's good talking to you, man.